And then are there penalties for non-compliance or failure to meet demand reduction commitments for one reason or another?
Clement, do you want to speak to that one for CNI, and I'll
Sure.
link it to another question and speak to the residential
Perfect.
side?
Yeah, so the depending on the type of program, right? So if there's a capacity auction demand response program that the plant or facility is enrolled in, like that's a contractual obligation. Now, depending on how you structure that contractual obligation, so for example, in Ontario or Alberta, the ISO or the AESO will call you, and they'll expect that whatever you committed to, that you'll be able to deliver, right? But if you structure that with an aggregator, something like, for example, Rodan or a number of other participants, the aggregator takes on that risk, and there's absolutely no financial penalty other than not earning as much on the demand response program. So it really depends on how you structure the agreement. The Global Adjustment ICI program, which is most often talked about because the value is still north of $300,000 per megawatt year in Ontario, that is a voluntary program. So there's no contractual obligation, unlike the capacity auction or operating reserves programs. And you basically reap a benefit relevant to what you deliver during those peak demand hours, but there's no contractual obligation. So yeah, I hope that answers most of that on the CNI space.
Great. And I will get to this one, but first I want to just speak to a question that raised a little further on. He asked if he understood right that BC Hydro and other utilities that are doing demand response for homes can directly control loads of residential clients. And just to explain that, typically the devices we're talking about, smarter connected thermostats or heating and cooling, water heating, and potentially EV charging. The answer is yes to a point, and it's a pretty small point. So often with heating and cooling, we're talking about a set point change of between 1 and maybe at most 3 degrees. So the idea is, you might not even, your comfort might not be affected. You might not be aware that your heating has been turned down for a short period of time. Similar with water heating, and because you have the thermal mass of that water tank, this makes water heating a really excellent load. It's rarely noticeable for homes if you turn down the power to that water tank for 2 to 4 hours. And for EV charging, often it's just pushing it outside of a high demand period, usually later into the evening. And in every case that I'm aware of, every utility has an easy option for participants to opt out or to say, no, I'm not going to participate. I'm cold. I don't want to be cold, or I need to charge my vehicle right now. I think utilities are very aware of, fundamentally they're providing power and a service, and that's what they're going to do, before they're going to do demand response. So then there was the question about, is there a penalty for opting out of an event or not complying? And on the residential side, in my experience, the answer is no. Participants are free to say, I'm cold, I'm turning my thermostat back up, and you're not going to get your incentive taken away. Though I'm speaking in generalities here, there may be specific cases that are slightly different. Overall, it's a pretty permissive structure.